Air Company has been doing a pretty good job trying to come up with ways to fight the climate crisis. And this time, they're looking towards making air travel have less of an impact on the environment. The idea is to leave less carbon footprints. Let's talk about this company wanting to make air travel sustainable. And while we're at it, let's also see whether supersonic aircraft will be the speed savior game changers. First up, what is Air Company aiming to do? The Brooklyn-based startup Air Company has just announced that it started making fuel for airplanes, and they're using the same methods they used when they tried to derive vodka from recaptured carbon. The U.S. Air Force recently tested a sustainable aviation fuel made by Air Company. This fuel could help the airline industry reach its goal of having a net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Right now, the airline industry is responsible for around 3% of the world's total carbon emissions each year, and most of its fuel comes from traditional fossil fuels. Plus, the way these fuels are made also ends up harming the environment. Now, some of the biggest airlines in the world who are already on board with Air Company's plan. In fact, last month, the company said that JetBlue, Virgin Atlantic, and a new company called Boom Supersonic had all agreed to buy millions of gallons of its fuel over the next few years. What's more, JetBlue Ventures has also apparently put money directly into Air Company's $30 million Series A funding round. Coming up, this project can help in the climate crisis to a great extent. Gregory Constantine, co-founder and CEO of Air Company, said that the company's trying to solve humanity's hardest problems. If you think about it, climate change is the biggest problem our species has ever had to deal with. So if this company can work with newer technologies in order to create a solution to a really big problem, that'll be a huge win for them. It'll be a huge win for the rest of us too, honestly. In the past few years, a number of companies have started making sustainable aviation fuel. One of the largest of these companies is Nest, which is based in Finland. Many of these companies use ingredients like plant matter and cooking oil, but the process of making things at Air Company starts with taking harmful carbon emissions out of the air. Let's look at the company's fuel-making process. First, the company gets carbon mostly from industrial places that make biofuel. According to Air Company's CTO, it then takes water, separates the hydrogen from the oxygen, and makes the captured carbon. They also then combine it with a secret mix of other compounds. After doing this, the solution is then boiled down using what looks like a bigger version of a system for making whiskey. The final products are ethyl alcohol, which is used to make vodka, and other products like perfume and paraffin, which is used to make jet fuel for the company. Stafford Sheehan said that the entire procedure, in some ways, is like how plants work. This means that it takes in carbon, and the only other thing it gives off besides the end products is oxygen. And the company says that its tests show that planes should be able to fly on its fuel. They do this without mixing it with fuels made from fossil fuels or making changes to their engines. By the time a plane with Air Company's fuel has flown, it will have put back into the air the same amount of carbon dioxide that was taken out to make the fuel. This means that the process as a whole is carbon neutral. What's more, the company even runs its production facility on clean energy sources like solar power. Lastly, it still has a long way to go. Even though they've been developing their technology over time, Air Company still needs to do a lot of work. Until then, it'll be a bit difficult to get fuel made from carbon to be used on most commercial flights. It needs to be tested more, and the number of places where it's made needs to grow too. They're already working on their next production facility, which will be about 100 times bigger than its test facility in Brooklyn. If you don't know already, the facility in Brooklyn is probably about the size of a 2-bedroom apartment in New York City. They'll also need to bring down the cost of its fuel, which is currently more expensive than traditional jet fuels. The company has declined to give us more details on just how much more expensive it is, though. Air Company said that this shift will be so seamless that consumers will not really feel the impact of it. Also, they'll work on lowering the costs through a lot of government incentives made available to fuel producers generating sustainable alternatives. The company is planning for the first test of its fuel to be done on a commercial plane next year. They also expect to have the fuel used on their first commercial passenger flight by 2024. Still, Air Company is hopeful that its efforts could eventually put a hold on the aviation industry for the better, just as it's been working to do with its consumer goods. And now let's look at, will supersonic aircrafts be the speed savior game changer? First up, Concorde became a big fail. When Concorde first appeared on the aviation scene in 1976, it was a big deal. This is because Concorde could fly at an exceptional speed of Mach 2, which cut the time it took to get from London to New York to just 3 hours. This was less than half the average time it took to fly on other planes. Rich people and well-known business people went crazy behind Concorde because they all wanted to experience its unbeatable speed and high-end service. This jet quickly became an exclusive experience that many people wanted to have. But after more than 25 years of service, Concorde was no longer a good investment. This is because of rising fuel costs that cut into profits and the noise level of the jet, which limited where it could fly. The high-profile crash of Air France's Concorde Flight 4590 also marked a really big point in history. As it left Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris in 2000, it ended up killing 113 people. So this incident obviously also took its toll. Before that, Concorde had a perfect safety record and was thought to be one of the safest planes in the world, but it soon became a pretty dangerous aircraft people needed to avoid. Up next, aircrafts took a backseat for a really long time. Apparently, changes were made after an investigation showed that the plane had hit something on the runway while taking off, and this had caused one of its tires to blow out and a hole to form in the fuel tank. The fuel tanks were lined with Kevlar, and the tires were made to resist bursting, but this didn't make much of a difference. In 2003, after the Paris crash, Air France and British Airways both announced that they would stop using the Concorde later that year. That said, the Concorde was still brought back to life a few times after this, but again, it just wasn't feasible due to the high costs of running the planes, the small number of passengers, and the growing desire for cheaper travel. Along with this, Airbus's decision to stop helping with the maintenance made it clear that supersonic air travel was best to be left in the past. Between 2003 and the end of the 2010s, not much changed in the world of aircraft that can fly faster than sound. There wasn't much interest in making a plane like the Concorde today. There wasn't a market for it anymore either, so people saw no point in trying to maintain this type of air travel. Finally, supersonic jets bounced back eventually. Things changed in 2019 when a new race to build jets that could fly faster than the speed of sound began to pick up speed. A number of new companies, all super ambitious, hope to bring about a new era of supersonic air travel. One of these is Boom, a company based in Denver that, after only 5 years in the business, had raised $141 million from investors. Now, this money was supposed to help build 55-seat planes that could fly twice as fast as sound. But, unlike Concorde, the prices for passengers are more reasonable. Boom says that its Overture jet, which will be made starting in 2025, will fly at Mach 1.7. This is just a bit slower than Concorde's Mach 2.04 and twice as fast as the fastest commercial planes made today. Virgin Atlantic, which is known for investing in the future of air travel and being a strong supporter of Concorde, was the first company to make a deal with Boom in 2016. They agreed to work together to build and test Boom's planes. Since then, 2 more airlines, United Airlines and American Airlines, have ordered 15 and 20 planes from Boom. Clearly, people want to travel faster than the speed of sound again. On that note, that's a wrap for this video. What are your thoughts on this company trying to make air travel sustainable? Are you a fan of supersonic aircrafts? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this.
Time to take off. To take off the limitations of how fuel is made. To take fossil fuels off the table. And take on the responsibility of sustainable innovation.